Leo's dream. The wrench slipped again, skinning Leo's knuckles. He cursed under his breath, a puff of white vapor in the chill morning air. Damn engine. The old Ford coughed and sputtered, refusing to turn over. He'd promised Lily he'd drive her to school today, a rare treat, but the temperamental beast was having none of it. He wiped grease across his forehead, leaving a dark smudge. Bills were piling up on the kitchen counter, thicker than a layer of frost on the windshield. Another repair on this rust bucket was the last thing he needed. Through the grimy garage window, he saw Lily sitting at the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration. Sunlight caught the bright colors of her crayons, illuminating the paper beneath. He knew what she was drawing. The school trip to the aquarium. He'd seen the flyers, the permission slips, the eager whispers among the other kids at the bus stop. $25. An impossible sum. He gave the engine one more try. Still nothing. He slammed the hood shut, the metallic clang echoing in the quiet street. He'd have to call Mrs. Henderson. Again. He walked into the kitchen, trying to mask his frustration with a smile. Hey, Squirt. What masterpiece are you working on? Lily looked up, her eyes shining with an innocent longing that twisted his gut. She held up the drawing. A colorful bus, filled with smiling children, pulled up to a large, glass-walled building teeming with exotic fish. She pointed to a small stick figure in the corner. That's me, Daddy. On the bus. Looking at the sharks. Leo's smile faltered. He knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her small shoulders. It's beautiful, Lilybug. You're a real artist. He swallowed hard, the words catching in his throat. He wanted to give her the world, but right now he couldn't even afford a new set of tires. Mrs. Henderson said they're learning about coral reefs, Lily continued, oblivious to his internal struggle. And they get to touch a starfish. He squeezed her tighter. I know, sweetie. It sounds amazing. He paused, searching for the right words. Listen, about the trip, Lily's face fell. She knew. He couldn't bear to see the disappointment in her eyes. He ruffled her hair, forcing a lightness into his voice he didn't feel. Don't worry, Lilypad. I'll figure something out. I promise. Maybe I can pick up some extra shifts. Maybe I can even fix that stupid car and get a better job. He hated making promises he wasn't sure he could keep, but the words tumbled out anyway, fueled by a desperate desire to erase the sadness from her face. Her eyes widened, hope flickering within them. Really, Daddy? He nodded, his resolve hardening. He didn't know how he'd do it, but he would. He would find a way. He had to. He looked at her drawing, at the vibrant colors, at the innocent joy radiating from the page. He stood up, his back straightening. Really? Now let's get you to school. We'll walk. It's a nice day for a walk. He grabbed his coat, the cold air a sharp reminder of the challenges ahead, but today it also felt like a challenge accepted. He would find a way to make Lily's dreams and his own come true. He just needed a little luck. Red Rolls Royce. The air compressor sputtered its last breath, wheezing like a chain smoker before finally giving up the ghost. Leo sighed, wiping grease from his forehead with a rag already stained black. Another fix-it job on a piece of equipment older than he was. He'd have to call Sal about getting a replacement. It would eat into his already stretched budget, but without a working compressor, Maxwell's auto repair was dead in the water. He tossed the rag onto a nearby toolbox and stretched, his back cracking in protest. As he did, something caught his eye across the street. A flash of crimson, brighter than any sunset he'd ever seen. Leo paused, forgetting the busted compressor. A red Rolls Royce, a shade so vibrant it seemed to hum with contained energy, was gliding to a stop in front of Sterling Motors, the fancy dealership that always felt like a world away from his own humble shop. The car was immaculate, a gleaming monument to wealth and effortless style. The sunlight danced off its chrome grille, reflecting back in blinding bursts. He'd seen luxury cars before, of course. They occasionally trickled into his garage with problems the owners couldn't be bothered to deal with themselves. But this was different. This wasn't just a car, it was an event. The kind of car that whispered stories of sun-drenched villas, champagne breakfasts, and lives lived on a different plane of existence. The Rolls-Royce purred contentedly as the engine died. A uniformed chauffeur emerged, crisp and precise in his movements. He opened the rear door and a figure stepped out. Leo couldn't make out many details from this distance, just the silhouette of a woman, tall and slender. She wore a dress that flowed like water, the color hidden in the shadows of the car. As she moved, a glint of gold caught the light, a bracelet, perhaps, or a watch. Then the unexpected. Even from across the street, Leo could feel a palpable tension radiating from the Sterling Motors dealership. Two men in sharp suits hurried out to meet her, their smiles tight and strained. They gestured emphatically, their body language stiff. The woman didn't seem impressed. She remained composed, her head held high, but something in her posture shifted, a subtle tightening of her shoulders. Leo's gut clenched. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but the scene felt wrong. It felt like trouble brewing just beneath the surface of polite smiles and expensive cars. He had a sudden, irrational urge to cross the street, to intervene, even though he had no idea what was happening. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. It was none of his business. He had a broken compressor and a stack of bills waiting for him. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was witnessing the prelude to something significant, something that would somehow pull him into its orbit. Kicked to the curb. Are you serious? Clara clipped, each syllable a shard of ice. I had an appointment. Confirmed yesterday. A Mr. Henderson? The manager, a man whose suit seemed moments away from detonating, puffed himself up like a poison toad. Mr. Henderson is unavailable. And frankly, Miss DuPont, your patronage isn't desired. Clara's brow, meticulously shaped, lifted in disbelief. Undesired? I'm here to purchase a vehicle. A rather extravagant one at that. What's the impediment? He shuffled papers, dodging her gaze like a guilty schoolboy. Suffice to say, we've investigated. We're aware of your profile. My profile? What does that even mean? Clara inclined forward, her voice a silken threat. A delicate cloud of jasmine and sandalwood, her signature scent, permeated the cramped space. Are you implying I lack the means to acquire one of your ridiculously priced status symbols? I'm suggesting you remove yourself before I summon security, he retorted, his voice cracking with false authority. We have no need of your type. Crimson stained Clara's cheeks. She opened her mouth, but words failed her. This transcended the mere transaction. It was deeper, more insidious. The unspoken prejudice, thick and suffocating, filled the room. A familiar fury began to simmer, a destructive urge to obliterate something, anything. Two hulking figures in cheap security garb materialized at the doorway. Wordlessly, they motioned for her to leave. Clara's fists tightened involuntarily. She yearned to fight, to unleash a torrent of outrage, to force them to acknowledge the injustice. But logic prevailed. With regal bearing, she sailed past them, her designer bag a pendulum of restrained anger. As she traversed the showroom, fragments of conversations reached her ears, muted murmurs and furtive glances. She felt like a specimen under glass, an outcast. Humiliation seared. Stepping outside, the harsh sunlight felt like an interrogation lamp, exposing her vulnerability. She groped for her phone, her fingers trembling. As she scrolled through her contacts, a tidal wave of weariness crashed over her. There was no one, nobody who would truly understand this brand of venom. Leo, wiping grime from his hands with a threadbare cloth, witnessed the drama unfold from the service bay. He hadn't overheard the exchange, but he observed the security escorts, Clara's face a taut mask of contained wrath. He noticed the judgmental stares of the other customers, their faces a mixture of prurient interest and smug superiority. He glimpsed the raw exposure in her gaze, a spark of recognition he felt deep within himself. He understood the sting of being judged, of being summarily dismissed. He wanted to intervene, to offer some semblance of support, but he hesitated. He was just the grease monkey, barely making ends meet. What could he possibly offer a woman of that stature? Yet, as she stood there, isolated and defeated, a surge of empathy flooded him. He couldn't dismiss the urge to help. An act of kindness. Clara cursed under her breath, kicking a stray pebble across the cracked asphalt of the dealership's back lot. Her pristine, custom-painted Rolls-Royce, a chariot of defiance against the world's injustices, now sat stubbornly silent. The dealership goons had practically shoved her and her stalled engine out the door. A shadow fell across her. Rough day? Clara bristled, turning to face a man she vaguely remembered from the waiting area. Leo Maxwell. He looked even more worn down than before, his jeans faded and his t-shirt clinging to him like a second skin. She didn't need charity, especially not from someone who looked like he could barely afford his own lunch. Mind your business, she snapped, immediately regretting the sharpness in her tone. But vulnerability felt like a weakness she couldn't afford. Leo flinched but didn't retreat. He held up a toolbox, its metal gleaming dully in the afternoon sun. I overheard about the engine trouble. I know my way around cars. Maybe I can help. Clara's skepticism hardened. You think you can fix what their mechanics couldn't? Please. She crossed her arms, a shield against his unsolicited kindness. He probably wanted something. Everyone always did. Leo shrugged, the gesture almost imperceptible. No guarantees, But judging by the way they were treating you, I doubt they even looked at it. Could be something simple. He gestured towards the rolls with a hesitant nod. Got a few tools here, wouldn't cost you anything to take a look. The utter lack of expectation in his voice surprised her. It wasn't a hustle. Maybe he genuinely just wanted to help. She was stranded, humiliated, and frankly out of her depth. Pride warred with practicality. Fine, she conceded, the word clipped and reluctant. But don't expect a parade if you manage to do anything. Leo's lips twitched in a barely there smile. He set the toolbox down and approached the rolls with a surprising air of confidence. He popped the hood, the heavy metal groaning in protest. The engine, a labyrinth of chrome and wires, looked intimidating even to her. Leo, however, seemed unfazed. He ran a practiced hand along the fuel line, his brow furrowed in concentration. He sniffed the air, a slight wrinkle appearing beside his eye. Then, with a grunt, he retrieved a wrench from his toolbox and tightened a small clamp on the fuel filter. Try it now, he said, wiping his hands on a rag he'd pulled from his back pocket. Clara raised an eyebrow but slid behind the wheel. She turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then roared to life. A wave of relief washed over her, so intense it almost brought her to her knees. She killed the engine and stared at Leo, who was already packing his tools. What did you do?" "Loose clamp," he said simply. Fuel wasn't getting through properly. Common issue, especially after they've been messing around under the hood. He avoided her gaze. Clara was speechless. This man, who looked like he was barely scraping by, had just fixed her ridiculously expensive car with a simple wrench. She reached for her purse. "How much do I owe you?" Leo shook his head, his eyes finally meeting hers. There was a weariness there, but also something else, a quiet satisfaction. "Nothing. Just glad I could help." He hoisted his toolbox. "Have a good day." And with that he walked away. Unexpected gratitude. Clara reached into her purse, pulling out a thick wad of bills. "Leo, I insist. Let me at least pay you for your time and the parts." Leo wiped his greasy hands on a rag, shaking his head firmly. "Nope. Not taking a dime. Consider it neighborly help. Besides," a faint smile touched his lips, "Lily would skin me alive if she found out I took money from someone in need. But this is a lot of work." "And you were closed," Clara protested, acutely aware of the black smudges now adorning her own fingers. "Look," Leo sighed, his gaze meeting hers with unexpected intensity. "I've been there. Stranded, helpless. Wouldn't wish it on anyone. Just pay it forward, all right?" Clara stared at him, searching for any hint of ulterior motive, any expectation hidden beneath the surface. There was none. Only weary sincerity. She lowered the money, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the midday sun. "All right, Leo. I will." He gestured towards the rolls, now purring contentedly. "Just get her back on the road. And try to stay out of trouble." Clara chuckled, a genuine sound that surprised even herself. "Trouble seems to find me." Leo leaned against the open garage door, his expression softening. "So, what brings someone like you to Harmony Creek?" "Just passing through," Clara said, a little too quickly. She didn't want to get into the details of her abrupt departure from the dealership or the simmering rage that still bubbled beneath her carefully constructed composure. Needed some fresh air. "Fresh air, huh? Well, you found it. Lily's in 3rd grade at the elementary school just down the road. She loves to draw." Clara filed the information away, her mind already formulating a plan. "She sounds lovely. And you, Leo, you're a good man." He shrugged, embarrassed. "Just trying to get by, same as everyone else." He glanced at his watch. "Gotta get back to it. Got a sputtering pickup needs some love before the farmer misses his market run." Clara nodded, stepping into the rolls. "Thank you again. For everything." As she backed out of the garage, she discreetly noted the address on the mailbox, 14 Maple Street. She also made a mental note to drive past the elementary school on her way out of town. Lily Maxwell, 3rd grade, loves to draw. Information was power, and she intended to wield it. Leo's unexpected gratitude deserved to be repaid. And Clara DuPont always repaid her debts with interest. The school trip dilemma. Lily bounced into the garage, a blur of pink backpack and untamed curls. The scent of oil and steel usually made her wrinkle her nose, but today she was immune. "Dad, guess what?" "Guess what?" Leo, wrestling with a stubborn bolt on Mrs. Henderson's ancient Buick, straightened up, wincing as his back protested. "Let me guess, they're finally serving something edible in the cafeteria?" "Better." Lily practically vibrated with excitement. "The school's going to Ocean World. We get to see dolphins and sharks and maybe even touch a starfish." Her eyes, usually the color of faded denim, sparkled like the ocean she described. Leo managed a smile, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. Ocean World, huh? Sounds expensive. The sparkle dimmed slightly. It is a bit. Mrs. Davison said it's $50, including the bus and the entrance fee. She held her breath, watching him. $50. Leo mentally inventoried his finances. Rent was due next week. The electricity bill was overdue. He'd been putting off replacing the bald tires on his own truck, gambling that they'd last just a little longer. $50 was a luxury he couldn't afford. He turned back to the Buick, pretending to tighten the bolt, needing a moment to compose himself. That sounds like a fantastic trip, Lilybug. Let me see what I can do. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, he sat at the kitchen table, the harsh fluorescent light illuminating the faded linoleum. He spread out the bills, their stark numbers mocking him. He added, subtracted, and then started again, hoping to find a hidden pocket of money. There wasn't one. He could skip a meal or two, maybe sell some of his tools, but even then it would be a stretch. And Lily deserved more than a dad who was always scrimping and saving. She deserved to see dolphins. The next morning, he found Lily sketching dolphins in her notebook. He poured her a glass of orange juice, the silence thick with unspoken anxieties. So she began, her voice small. About Ocean World. He sighed. This was the hard part. Lilybug, he said, choosing his words carefully. I've been looking at the bills and this month's just really tight. I don't think I can swing the trip. Her shoulders slumped. The dolphins in her notebook looked suddenly lifeless. Oh, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She stared at the juice, swirling it around in the glass. I know you're disappointed, Leo said, reaching out to touch her hand. Her skin was cool. And I'm sorry, really sorry, but maybe we can do something else. We could go to the park or watch a movie or... It's not the same, she mumbled, pulling her hand away. She pushed her chair back from the table and walked to her room, the click of the closing door echoing through the small house. Leo slumped back in his chair. He hated disappointing her. Hated feeling like he was failing her. He stared at the bills, the numbers blurring into a chaotic mess. He had to find a way. He just had to. The stubborn set to his jaw hadn't been there before. A gleaming arrival. Leo Maxwell reeked of engine grease and quiet desperation. Above him, the garage's fluorescent tubes buzzed a weary drone as he cinched the final bolt on Mrs. Henderson's geriatric Buick. Another double shift bled into the pre-dawn hours. The clock glared 3:17 a.m. He'd promised Lily a real breakfast, something beyond charred bread and thin milk, and that pledge demanded another hour wrestling recalcitrant machinery. He scrubbed his hands with a tattered rag, the ingrained dirt a testament to his livelihood. Lily's school trip loomed, a gaping maw threatening to devour their meager savings. He'd sworn she could go, promised her the moon, really, and now the debt was due. Even if it meant sacrificing sleep, his dwindling sanity, and any semblance of a social life. Back home, the air hung still and heavy with the pre-dawn quiet. He crept into Lily's room, mindful of waking her. Asleep, she clutched a threadbare teddy bear while a small avalanche of crumpled school trip brochures littered her nightstand. He picked one up, a pang of guilt twisting in his gut. Sun-drenched images of laughing children kayaking, sharing stories around a crackling campfire, their faces lit with pure, unadulterated joy. With infinite care, he brushed a stray tendril of hair from her brow. He'd make it happen. He would. 2 hours of fractured sleep on the sway-backed sofa offered little solace, his dreams a chaotic montage of broken spark plugs and mounting bills. The persistent dawn chorus yanked him back to reality. He lumbered toward the kitchen, Lily's bright, hopeful eyes a stark contrast to his own weary ones. Halfway through whipping up pancakes, an infrequent luxury, he heard it. A deep, almost subterranean thrum that swelled steadily. He frowned, peering through the window. Not the usual delivery trucks, not the neighbor's beat-up pickup. This was something else entirely. Something prohibitively expensive. A silver Rolls-Royce materialized, gliding to a stop outside his humble bungalow like an apparition. Its presence as jarring as a symphony in a junkyard. Chrome flared in the strengthening sunlight, obscenely opulent. Leo froze, spatula suspended midair. A glob of batter threatening to splat on the linoleum. He recognized that car. He knew that implausible, elegant beast. Couldn't be. Not here of all places. Not now of all times. But undeniably it was. The rear door swung silently inward. An offer he can't refuse. The Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow purred a low growl that momentarily drowned out the clatter of Leo's wrench against the engine block. He glanced up, wiping grease from his brow with the back of his hand. The passenger door swung open and Clara DuPont unfolded herself from the leather interior, impossibly elegant even in the middle of Leo's perpetually messy garage. "Mr. Maxwell," she said, her voice crisp, cutting through the humid air. "I trust the silver shadow is behaving itself?" Leo straightened, tossing the wrench onto his workbench. "Runs like a dream, Ms. DuPont. Just needed a little persuasion." He gestured vaguely at the open hood of a beat-up Ford pickup parked nearby, hoping she wouldn't delve into the details of his jury-rigged solution. Clara's gaze swept over the garage, taking in the haphazard stacks of tires, the stained concrete floor, and the faint scent of oil and sweat. She didn't flinch. "I appreciate your unconventional methods. They seem to be effective." She paused, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Maxwell." He braced himself. He'd half expected her to demand compensation for the persuasion. "I need someone reliable. Someone who understands discretion. And someone who clearly knows their way around a combustion engine even if they have to beat it into submission." She drew closer, the scent of expensive perfume momentarily overpowering the smell of motor oil. "I'm offering you a job, Mr. Maxwell, as my personal mechanic and driver." Leo stared, his mind struggling to process her words. "Personal, what?" "I need someone to maintain my vehicles, drive me when necessary, and generally handle the logistical aspects of my life." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "The pay is substantial, the benefits are excellent, and you'd have access to state-of-the-art equipment. No more persuasion required." He thought of Lily, of the ramen noodles and the overdue bills. He thought of the worn-out swing set in their tiny backyard and the dreams he couldn't afford to fulfill. "Ms. DuPont, I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Mr. Maxwell. Say you'll consider it." Hesitation gnawed him. He'd always been his own boss, even if that boss was perpetually broke. He valued his independence, his connection to this grimy little garage. But Lily deserved better. "What about my garage? I can't just—" "I'll buy it," Clara stated matter-of-factly. "At a fair price, of course. You can use the money to invest, to save, to provide for your daughter." He ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of grease in its wake. "This is a lot to take in." Clara's expression softened just a fraction. "I understand. But consider this, Mr. Maxwell. You're struggling. I can offer you security, opportunity. An escape from this." She gestured around the garage again. But this time, her tone held a hint of something that wasn't quite pity, but perhaps understanding. "This life." He looked at her, at the Rolls-Royce gleaming in the afternoon sun, at the promise of a different future flickering in her eyes. He pictured Lily's face, her bright smile, her unwavering belief in him. "All right," he said, his voice hoarse. "All right, Ms. DuPont. I accept." Dreams come true. The wrench slipped in Leo's greasy hand, clattering to the concrete floor with a disheartening clang. He swore under his breath, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his arm, leaving a smudge of grime. He was bone-tired, every muscle aching, but he had promised Lily he'd finish fixing Mrs. Henderson's sputtering minivan today. He needed the money. He finally finished the van, then locked up the garage and trudged home, the taste of exhaust and desperation clinging to the back of his throat. He found Lily hunched over her textbooks at the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Hey, sweet pea," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. She looked up, her face lighting up. "Dad, how was work?" Leo leaned against the doorframe, suddenly hesitant. He didn't want to get her hopes up, but he couldn't keep it to himself any longer. "Remember I told you about that client? The one with the fancy car?" Lily nodded, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Mrs. DuPont?" "Clara," he corrected, a smile tugging at his lips. "Well, she offered me a job. A real job." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "A job? Doing what?" "Being her personal mechanic and driver. All her cars. And she offered a good salary, Lily. A really good one." The color drained from Lily's face, and for a heart-stopping moment, Leo thought she was going to faint. Then her eyes welled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. "Dad, does that mean?" He nodded, his own eyes stinging. "It means you can go on the school trip. To the Grand Canyon." Lily launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. "Oh, Dad. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." She pulled back, her face radiant. "I can't believe it. I really get to go." He hugged her back, squeezing her tight. "You earned it, Lily. You work so hard." He felt a lump forming in his throat. He had almost failed her. They pulled apart, both breathless and beaming. Lily grabbed his hands, her fingers interlacing with his. This is the best day ever. Leo looked at her, at the pure, unadulterated joy on her face, and felt a warmth spread through him, chasing away the exhaustion and the desperation. He felt a surge of something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Let's celebrate, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Pizza? Ice cream? Whatever you want. Lily squealed with delight. Pizza. And then we can start planning the Grand Canyon trip. I need a new backpack and hiking boots. Her voice trailed off as she began to list the things she needed. As they walked to the local pizza place hand in hand, Leo felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He still had to figure out the details of the job with Clara, but for now he allowed himself to bask in the moment. He had a good kid. And now maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The Rolls-Royce had found him, but it was Lily's unwavering spirit that had truly paved the way.